America was taken aback by Mike Wolf's sentencing. Everyone assumed that the American Pickers star's arrest was due to a quarrel with the History Channel or even a conflict over antiques when he was carried away in handcuffs. Breaking news sources state that Wolf was taken into custody because his former co-host Frank Fritz's death wasn't caused by natural causes as first claimed. Investigators now categorize it as deliberate murder instead. According to medical sources, Fritz intentionally overdosed on his prescription and was discovered with deadly doses in his system. Wolf was detained by prosecutors for the murder, which they said was planned rather than unintentional. It's incomprehensible, some would even call it evil, to drug a former business partner who had entire faith in you. Wolf was already in jail and facing serious charges for what authorities described as a vengeance killing driven by jealousy and greed, despite the fact that many fans thought the tension between the two Pickers was merely for the sake of television ratings. However, social media reports revealed that as detectives obtained more evidence, Wolf's accusations were first temporarily dropped. According to a different post, Wolf was first taken into custody after being dropped off at Fritz's house by an American Pickers crew member after he passed away. After conducting a comprehensive investigation, the Iowa State Police pushed for first-degree murder charges after discovering incriminating evidence such as Wolf's fingerprints on prescription bottles and questionable text messages to Fritz. When the medical examiner discovered discrepancies in Frank Fritz's toxicology result, the investigation into his death got underway. Although the autopsy found alarming amounts of prescription pharmaceuticals in his system, considerably more than would be prescribed for his condition, the official cause of death had been declared to be complications from his stroke. Given that Fritz had been closely adhering to his prescription schedule during his recuperation, this raised concerns right away. A covert inquiry into who had access to Fritz in his last hours was launched by the Iowa State Police. Even seasoned detectives were taken aback by what they found. Fritz's neighborhood security camera showed Wolf's car pulling into the house late at night, around 3 hours before the police were called. Wolf made the 911 call later that evening, saying he had been to see how his old friend was doing and discovered him unconscious. When paramedics arrived, they discovered Fritz without a pulse. He was declared dead at the spot after attempts to revive him failed. The toxicology results contradicted the initial assertions that it was connected to his prior stroke. Investigators were especially skeptical of Wolf's actions in the immediate aftermath of Fritz's death. He acted swiftly to establish ownership over Fritz's collection and intellectual property, rather than the typical period of grief. He had gotten in touch with Fritz's lawyers within 48 hours to discuss purchasing the rights to his name and likeness for upcoming American Pickers products. He also moved right away to gain access to Fritz's storage areas, which housed priceless antiques that had never been seen on the show, according to evidence from the production team. According to several staff members, Wolf appeared abnormally focused and unfazed by Fritz's death when discussing business so soon after his death. Detectives examined Wolf's home and workplace and found a concealed safe with multiple unmarked prescription bottles that were subsequently proven to contain the same drugs Fritz had been using. The most damning evidence was a journal that was discovered in Wolf's travel luggage. In it, he detailed his developing animosity for Fritz in great detail. Some of the entries were from years ago and used progressively offensive language. Only a few weeks prior to his passing, Fritz wrote in one entry, "F believes he can return and reclaim half of the limelight. He doesn't remember that there wouldn't be a show without me. He has turned into a liability. According to the network, there is only one option for me to preserve what I have created." Wolf seemed remarkably composed during the 6-week trial, sitting quietly behind his lawyers while the prosecution explained how he had carefully orchestrated Fritz's killing. He had been investigating untraceable poisons and techniques to make a murder appear to have been caused by natural causes, according to evidence presented before the jury. His search history on the internet included questions like, is it possible to identify drug interactions for stroke after death? As well as, how to make someone's death appear to be the result of stroke complications. The prosecution contended that Wolf had used Fritz's prior medical conditions, viewing them as the ideal pretext for killing him. In their testimonies, former American Pickers cast members described how they saw unsettling shifts in Wolf and Fritz's relationship in the years before Fritz left the show and died. According to one production assistant's testimony, she heard intense debates concerning the program's future course, during which Wolf demanded total creative authority. According to the assistant's testimony, he informed Frank that his health issues had resulted in him losing the right to equitable billing. According to multiple witnesses, Wolf was become more domineering, frequently criticizing Fritz in front of network executives and cutting him off from his long-standing friends in the vintage scene. Danielle Colby, who reluctantly testified for the prosecution, gave what was arguably the most dramatic testimony. She talked about confronting Wolf about his treatment of Fritz while fighting back tears. She stated, "I saw Mike had developed an obsession with being the only representative of American pickers. He became defensive and irate when I questioned him about making amends with Frank, telling me to stop interfering in things that don't concern you." Colby recounted confronting Wolf after discovering unsettling notes regarding Fritz's prescription regimen in his office. Wolf stated that he was only worried about Frank's well-being. By implying that Wolf had sincerely attempted to make amends with Fritz prior to his passing, the defense team attempted to present a picture of a misinterpreted friendship. They called up network officials to testify on Wolf's public endorsements of Fritz's recuperation. Fritz's personal doctor's testimony, however, seriously weakened this idea. He claimed that although Fritz had been worried about his health, he had been hopeful about his recovery and had been planning to start his own antique business. Additionally, the doctor attested that he had never prescribed the drugs that Fritz was taking in such large quantities. During cross-examination, Wolf's meticulously preserved poise started to falter. He yelled at the prosecution when she asked him directly if he had given Fritz the drugs. "What it's like to create something from nothing and have someone else claim credit is beyond your comprehension. To grin for the cameras when everyone believes he is equally vital to the success of the show." His defense team had to request a recess because of his outburst, but the damage had already been done. Jurors later stated that this particular instance was crucial to their decision-making since it exposed the bitterness Wolf continued to feel years after Fritz left. When forensic accountants testified on questionable modifications to Wolf's company structure in the months preceding Fritz's passing, the financial motivation became evident. In the event that Fritz became incapacitated or died, Wolf had been covertly reorganizing his businesses to take over his intellectual property. Additionally, he had purchased a commercial insurance policy on Fritz, which resulted in a $5 million payout for his company. Prosecutors also disclosed that Wolf had created other shell corporations that Fritz was not aware of and had been moving priceless antiques into them, accumulating assets of more than $2 million. After only 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty decision. Everything went utterly haywire when the judge handed down his life sentence without the possibility of release. Wolf, who had remained composed the entire trial, sprung to his feet and screamed, "You're not getting it. Everything was going to be ruined by him. He was going to ruin my reputation." Legal pads and water glasses flew as he lunged across the defense table. Before they could stop him, he was already racing toward Fritz's family and swinging violently as the bailiffs hurried toward him. As Wolf escaped again, the courtroom erupted in cries and a stampede toward the exits. This time, he grabbed an old walking stick that had been brought in as evidence and swung it like a weapon, hitting one of the bailiffs in the shoulder. "American Pickers is what I built. It was the work of my life." As 3 additional officers tackled him to the ground, he screamed. As authorities attempted to subdue Wolf, he continued to fight furiously, kicking and yelling about betrayal, and the judge was evacuated from the courtroom. Wolf attempted to charge at Fritz's sister, who was present during the sentence, and security had to remove her out. "I was worthy of everything. My show." When they eventually succeeded in handcuffing him, he yelled. The most startling part occurred when Wolf yelled at Danielle Colby, who was sat in the gallery, when they met eyes. "Be honest with them. Tell them the truth about Frank." Other crew members started crying, and Colby looked aside, clearly upset. The trial has split the American Picker family. Some have testified for the prosecution, while others have sided with Wolf. According to court filings, in the years preceding Fritz's passing, Wolf had been deliberately inciting crew members against him, causing severe rifts within the production team that would never fully mend. Even more alarming revelations were revealed as Wolf resumed his outburst while security personnel fought to contain him. He cried out he was going to start his own show. At least 3 individuals were hurt, including Wolf's own defense lawyer, who was hit by a flying water pitcher. Courtroom reporters called the incident surreal and said, "He told me I was obsolete, that the network wanted him back." He kept yelling about betrayal and his legacy as they hauled him out of the courtroom, accusing Fritz of plotting to destroy him. His violent outburst virtually killed any hope of a successful appeal, according to legal experts subsequently, as it ran counter to his defense team's claim that he was a misunderstood businessman incapable of violence. Former co-workers and acquaintances of Wolf came forward with anecdotes in the days after his courtroom breakdown, providing fresh insight into his personality. When he didn't get his way, Wolf would sometimes get furious behind the scenes, according to former American Pickers producer Thomas Reynolds. He maintained this perfect folksy image on camera, Reynolds stated, but off camera, he could be terrifying, especially to junior staff. When the cameras stopped rolling, his whole demeanor would change. Others said he had grown more suspicious in recent years, believing Fritz was planning to make a comeback to television with a rival program. The reality television community has been rocked by the case. With millions of viewers worldwide, American Pickers' future is now questionable. All Wolf-related episodes have been cancelled by the History Channel, which also released a statement expressing astonishment and condolences for Fritz's family. The future of the event is still uncertain as a number of significant sponsors have withdrawn their support. In an effort to preserve Fritz's legacy and take legal action against the network for permitting Wolf's increasingly unpredictable actions, Fritz's family has applied for possession of his intellectual property and antique collection. According to mental health professionals who have examined the case, Wolf might have had narcissistic personality disorder, which was made worse by his years of fame. Dr. Robert Keller, a forensic psychologist who attended the trial, stated, "While this doesn't excuse his actions, it helps explain the disconnect between his public persona and private behavior. People with narcissistic traits can appear charming and composed while harboring intense resentment and plotting revenge. The departure of Fritz from the show would have been a narcissistic injury that festered for years." The most unsettling aspect of all was probably how Wolf manipulated public opinion by using his position as a television celebrity. He used social media in the weeks after Fritz's death to unveil unique items in his honor and to tearfully explain that his death was due to complications from his stroke. This was not just murder, Sarah Donovan, the prosecution, stated during her closing remarks. This was a calculated deception of millions of trusting viewers who mourned alongside a man who had killed his former partner and was using their grief to enrich himself. In the weeks after Fritz's death, investigators discovered that more than $1 million had been raised, much of it going to accounts that were only accessible by Wolf. Former viewers and supporters must balance Mike Wolf's public persona as an avid antique collector with his actual nature as a murderous and violent man in the courtroom as he begins his life sentence. Robert Jenkins, a longtime American Pickers fan, said, "Many have expressed feeling betrayed not just by Wolf's actions but by the years of deception. We invited him into our homes every week. We trusted his folksy charm and passion for preservation, only to discover it was all a facade. It's devastating." TV personalities who had previously accompanied Wolf have distanced themselves. A number of them have released remarks expressing astonishment and urging remembrance of Fritz. The tragedy is still being played out for the team of American Pickers. They testified at the trial, revealing a production that was sharply split between those who thought Wolf was innocent and those who thought he was guilty. Prosecutor Danielle KBY has taken a leave of absence from television, stating that she needs time to recover and think. She made a brief statement requesting privacy and expressing hope that, in spite of these awful circumstances, the heritage of antique preservation that first drew them all together can somehow continue. Other crew members have mostly avoided the spotlight as they deal with the trauma of both Fritz's death and Wolf's conviction for his murder. "Mr. Wolf," the judge said, "you presented yourself as a champion of American history and preservation while harboring thoughts of revenge and murder. You used your platform to preach the value of the past while plotting the death of the man who helped build that platform. Today, justice is served not just for Frank Fritz, but for the millions of viewers who trusted you." The judge's last remarks prior to Wolf's outburst seem especially prophetic now. The violent outburst that would be Wolf's last public appearance before he was taken away to spend the rest of his life in prison started when he rushed across the table. Fans of the Pawn Stars were shocked to learn that Richard Kevin Harrison, popularly known as Rick Harrison, had received a life sentence. Rick, who was well known on the show for his encyclopedic knowledge and no-nonsense approach to business, unexpectedly found himself in significant legal problems. The fascinating world of pawn dealing, rare artifacts, difficult discussions, and the everyday drama inside Rick Harrison's well-known Las Vegas pawn store were all depicted in Pawn Stars, which delighted viewers. However, Rick's once thriving TV career has now taken an unexpected and gloomy turn. However, what specifically did he do to merit such a harsh penalty? Join us as we explore the specifics of this startling case and what caused Rick's life to take such a severe turn. Born in Lexington, North Carolina, on March 22, 1965, Richard Kevin Harrison is a well-known American businessman and television personality. He spent the most of his early years in San Diego, California, after moving there with his family when he was just 2 years old. Due to his epilepsy, which he suffered at the age of 8, Rick spent a large portion of his early years reading books, which helped him build the remarkable historical knowledge that would later be useful in his work. Rick had a difficult childhood. He eventually dropped out of high school in his second year due to his frequent absences from school caused by his fight with epilepsy. But his drive and his desire to learn were unabated by this setback. Rather, he committed himself to self-education, reading books on a variety of topics, especially business and history. His encyclopedic expertise on Pawn Stars would subsequently demonstrate this autodidactic technique. Rick started assisting his father in a variety of business endeavors when he was a teenager. He gained a sharp sense of authenticity and worth, which would be extremely useful in his future profession. Rick and Kim got married after Kim, his fiancée, became pregnant when she was just 17 years old. After 8 years of marriage, the young couple would eventually divorce and produce 2 kids, Corey and Adam. Rick's father, Richard Benjamin Harrison, often referred to as the Old Man, started the gold and silver coin shop in Las Vegas, Nevada, when the family moved there in 1981. The company finally changed its name to the renowned Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in 1989, which would serve as the backdrop for Pawn Stars for many years to come. The Harrisons made the calculated decision to switch from a coin shop to a pawn shop after realizing that the pawn industry could yield more earnings. In order to build their reputation in Las Vegas, Rick and his father had to put in a lot of overtime during the early years. Rick frequently had to deal with challenging clients in risky circumstances. These encounters sharpened his negotiating abilities and made him more resilient. Rick was well known in Las Vegas by the early 2000s for his knowledge of a wide range of historical objects and collectibles. That he was being singled out because to his fame and that the accusations were politically motivated. He maintained that because of his achievement, dishonest people were trying to harm his name. His claims of innocence were refuted by the growing body of evidence and the testimonies of people who knew him well. Rick's defense team contended during the trial that he was not aware of any unlawful activity and that any abnormalities were the consequence of incompetent staff members working without his knowledge. However, this defense was refuted by the prosecution's compelling evidence, which included the previously stated financial records and text conversations. According to witness testimony, Rick was fully aware of the scams and actively engaged in them in order to maximize income while evading the law. The jury debated for days during a protracted and well-reported trial before finding the defendant guilty of all charges. Rick Harrison was found guilty of conspiracy to traffic in illegally obtained cultural objects, trading in stolen property, tax evasion, and money laundering. In a startling and dramatic change of events, the court condemned the once-loved television personality to life in prison. Pawn Stars fans were stunned in shock as the news broke, finding it difficult to make sense of the Rick they had seen on TV for more than 10 years and the man who had been found guilty of major crimes. On social media, many people voiced their shock, with some even going so far as to claim that the disclosures personally betrayed them. Following the trial, the History Channel decided to permanently remove Pawn Stars from its schedule. In a statement, the network expressed dismay at what had happened and pledged to work closely with law authorities in the case's aftermath. Sales of the show's merchandise, which had previously been a significant source of income, also fell precipitously, and the legal ramifications caused many of Rick's business endeavors to fail. With his son Corey Harrison and his longtime pals under public scrutiny, Rick's family was left to pick up the pieces. Although he refrained from publicly denouncing his father, Corey, who had worked closely with him at the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, expressed his sadness and displeasure over the situation. Another longtime cast member, Chumley, called for privacy and respect for all impacted by the situation in a brief message. Following the case, mental health professionals observed that Rick's decline reflected some of the symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder, especially his need to preserve an invulnerable public image and his inability to take responsibility. They proposed that Rick's feelings of above-the-law status and immunity from the repercussions of his conduct were probably made worse by years of fame and fortune. Many people questioned whether the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop would ever bounce back from the controversy as the investigation came to an end. Although it didn't seem possible that the store would ever regain its previous renown, others conjectured that Corey, who had worked with Rick for years, would attempt to restore the company. In the meantime, Rick's once bright career had been diminished to a warning story, a reminder that wealth and celebrity can occasionally have disastrous results. An era for Pawn Stars and its legendary characters came to an end with the conviction. What started out as a heartwarming tale of a family company devolved into a startling tale of deceit, greed, and ruin. Because of his accomplishments and political beliefs, he was being singled out. During hearings, his fans organized rallies outside the courthouse and created hashtags like #FreeRick to show their support for him. Many people, who viewed Rick as the astute, pragmatic owner of Pawn Stars, were shocked when he breached the law. Rick Harrison of Pawn Stars recently had his arrest report made public. Few people realized that he actually had a far more calculating side. His legal issues exposed another facet of his character, and the revelations didn't end there. It's crucial to keep in mind that everyone deserves compassion at their most trying moments, even though many people have been quick to criticize Rick based on media accounts. Numerous devoted followers have set up social media support groups, highlighting the fact that Rick's instructional approach on Pawn Stars has improved their lives and should be acknowledged despite the accusations. One donor said, "Rick taught me to love history in a way school never could. Now is our chance to let him know that we appreciate all that he has done." If Rick's work has impacted you over the years, you might want to join these online support groups. As the punishment was read, there was silence in the courtroom. Rick, who had remained calm during the trial, became noticeably pale. Behind him, his son Corey buried his head in his hands. Chumley, who had supported his mentor at the trial every day, was observed leaving the courtroom in a hurry, overtaken with emotion. Many legal experts expressed amazement at the sentence, arguing that it was out of proportion to the crimes committed. However, the judge stressed that Rick's role in the trafficking of stolen objects caused irreversible harm to historical and cultural heritage, in addition to the financial crimes, which were reflected in the sentence. During sentencing, the judge said, "Harrison, you have shown the American public that you are a steward of history, someone who appreciates the history of artifacts and understands their significance to our shared legacy. In actuality, however, you have taken part in the deliberate looting and devastation of priceless cultural landmarks for your own financial gain. The seriousness of such acts cannot be disregarded by this court." Rick's legal team immediately appealed the sentence in the days after it was handed down, claiming that, considering the nonviolent nature of the crimes, the punishment was unjust and harsh. Additionally, they asked that Rick be let to be free on bond while the appeal was ongoing. This request was turned down, and pictures of Rick being taken away in handcuffs took over social media and news coverage. Rick's conviction and sentencing elicited a range of responses. Incredulous, many devoted followers implied that there must have been a miscarriage of justice. Others praised the harsh penalty as an essential deterrence to the profitable trafficking in stolen antiquities, especially those from the academic and cultural heritage communities. His fan following has shown an unusual level of camaraderie in response to Rick's predicament, with supporters highlighting the disproportionate nature of Harrison's sentence in comparison to similar cases. The Hearts for Harrison campaign has gathered over 100,000 signatures in favor of a review of his case. "If he broke the law, we're not saying he shouldn't face consequences," Melissa Jenkins, the campaign organizer, clarified. "We are arguing that a life sentence for non-violent crimes is a reflection of vengeance rather than justice. Consider signing the petition or contributing to Rick's legal defense fund if you think he deserves another shot. He can guarantee that he has the resources required for a successful appeal with even a little donation. Every money spent on his legal defense, every encouraging letter, and every prayer makes a difference. My father made mistakes, but he doesn't deserve to die in prison," Corey said. "He merits the opportunity to set things right." In a swift move to disassociate itself from Rick, the History Channel formally canceled Pawn Stars and took reruns off of its immediate schedule. The network said in a statement that it was deeply disappointed by Rick's behavior and reaffirmed its dedication to treating historical objects and cultural property with respect and in accordance with the law. Rick continued to have a big influence on the pawn industry and reality TV despite his legal issues. He had effectively established a corporate empire that went well beyond the pawn store prior to his legal troubles. He opened a number of clubs and restaurants in Las Vegas as a result of his business attitude, and he had ambitions to open more in other places. His son Corey Harrison is currently in charge of the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, which is still a well-liked tourist attraction in Las Vegas. Corey has tried to relaunch the store, stressing openness in all transactions and collaborating with museums and educational institutions to encourage ethical collecting techniques, even though visitor numbers initially decreased after Rick's imprisonment. 6 months after his father's sentencing, Corey addressed the valid concerns expressed at the trial and talked about the difficulties of maintaining the family business in an emotional interview. He said, "We've put in place strict new procedures for confirming the origin of every item we buy. What transpired was incorrect, and we are dedicated to contributing to the solution rather than the issue." Chumley has openly discussed his mixed emotions toward Rick, whom he had long admired as a father figure and mentor. In a podcast interview, he stated, "I learned so much from Rick, good business practices that I'll carry with me forever. However, I've had to come to terms with the fact that he had an other side that I either didn't see or didn't want to see. It has been challenging." Rebuilding their business and reputation while assisting Rick during the appeal process continues to be the Harrison family's top priority. Many people who knew Corey mostly as Rick's occasionally impetuous son on the show were shocked by his business skills, especially now that he is entirely in charge of the family business. The love and support that fans from all around the world have shown the Harrison family has been overwhelming. "Your encouraging messages have been our father's lifeline," Corey remarked in a recent news release. Despite everything, he finds strength in knowing that so many people still believe in him, and he reads every letter that is sent to him. More than ever, Rick needs your help. Every Sunday, the family hosts prayer circles outside the pawn store, where devoted followers congregate to express solidarity. The family invites fans who are unable to travel to Las Vegas to submit letters, cards, or even pictures of special moments from the program that made viewers happy. These modest actions have a huge impact on a man going through his lowest points. In a recent interview, Corey stated, "I learned everything I know about this business from my father. I'm currently working to expand on the positive aspects of that schooling. Even though we made some serious mistakes, this store has been a part of Las Vegas for more than 30 years, and I'm committed to keep it there for another 30. Rick has had an absolutely remarkable journey. His journey from humble beginnings as a pawn shop owner to reality TV star, entrepreneur, and now a convicted felon facing a life sentence illustrates how swiftly fortunes may shift, particularly in the harsh spotlight of celebrity. Cultural analysts have pointed out that Rick's demise was virtually Shakespearean, a guy whose extraordinary historical knowledge finally failed to stop him from using historical items as a tool of his devastation. His narrative has evolved into a warning about the perils of achievement, the temptations that accompany it, and the occasionally hazy boundaries between wise economic practices and illegal action. We'll provide you with all the most recent information as this story progresses. This case is unprecedented, leaving the reality television industry in shock and a family business struggling to survive without its charismatic CEO. Rick Harrison needs all the help he can get during these trying times. Consider sending Rick your prayers, good vibes, and encouraging words if you've watched Pawn Stars and value what he's contributed to television over the years. Supporters can post notes on the Harrison family's website, and they will be delivered to Rick while he is incarcerated. During this trying time in his life, your encouraging words could mean the difference. The website also provides the address for sending messages of support, and the family says that receiving encouragement from fans has been Rick's biggest source of strength during this difficult time. According to a family statement, Rick has always valued the Pawn Stars audience. Knowing that you're still at his side means the world to him now more than ever.